just need cards. Splash that 10.
They gave you the double thumbs up. I think it's okay.
I think so. Go.
Excellent. This is the Salina City Planning Commission, and I'll call this meeting to order. We'll begin today with a roll call, which I believe all are present.
Appears that all of our members, Mr. Story is here.
He is here.
And Spencer Angel, our youth member, is not.
Thank you. And our first item on the agenda would then be approval of minutes, which is from our September 4th meeting. Any
Move to
discussion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Any discussion? If not, all in favor vote aye, please. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Bringing us to new business. Come on in. We're waiting for you. You're fine. We'll take off the
You'll have
statement that you're not here.
You have to move your
Let it be
chair over
known.
there.
Mr. Angel's here.
So we'll have, Wally's here, so we'll have you.
All right, I'm sorry.
You're good.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew. So that brings us to item number 3, our public hearing items today. We do not have any public hearing items. Our first administrative item is an annual business meeting today. So I'll turn that over to Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, members of the commission. We, depending on when appointments are made and how people get seated, we either use the first or second meeting in September as our annual meeting of the Planning Commission. Most of the terms that we have for advisory board members expire on August 31st. And so in this case, we had one member, Commissioner Norland, whose term expired, and John Olson was appointed to a 3-year term to replace Mr. Norland, and then Mr. Baffa was reappointed to a new 3-year term. And earlier in the year, Mona Eisenhower joined the commission as a replacement for Kirk Kusick, who was one of our 2 outside city members. And then we have Spencer Angel, who is here as our youth member. So we have a full complement of 9 commissioners and a youth member. And our first item of business is the election of a chair and a vice chair. And David Norland served as your chair the past year, and his term on the commission has expired. So all current members of the commission are eligible for the position of chair. And so at this point, I would pause and consider placing into nomination names for the position of chair.
Nobody's going to say anything?
Well, do we have any nominations? I'll say that.
All right, I nominate Owen Freiberger for chairman.
Okay, second.
A second.
Who was the second?
All of it. Everybody. All of it.
You
Doesn't matter. It was not me.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have Mr. Freiberger's name placed in his nomination in place. Are there any additional nominations, or does someone want to move that nomination cease?
With the nomination cease,
Second.
and I think, can't remember the exact wording, by acclamation.
Acclamation.
Acclamation, no one's elected.
Well, thank you again. I'm honored. It's always a pleasure. It's been a nice 4.5 years.
So we have a newly seated chair, but we need to have a person nominated to serve as vice chair who would serve in the absence of Mr. Freiberger and chair the meeting. Mr. Freiberger could have served another term as vice chair, but he is now chair, so he is the only one not eligible to be vice chair. So would there be any names to place in nomination for the position of vice chair?
Any nominations for vice chair? This obviously wasn't planned, as they point
It
fingers
is
at each
appropriate.
other.
It is appropriate to volunteer, even if you want to nominate yourself, so.
Where is Mr. Story?
I thought he was on the phone.
Can I make a nomination?
You can. You have the floor.
Well, since there aren't any others, I mean, I don't want to single out anyone or pick anyone out in particular, but I've watched the ones that said they don't want to do it. Ms. Jackson, is it something?
Pardon me?
Is it something that you'd be interested in?
I don't think I should take it on. Thank you.
Well, you've been here, I'm counting years, you know, back to you and Ms. Good came on my first term as chairman, so I'm going back in time, backwards. Which brings me to Mr. Linkowitz, who would have come on next. I'm not to do this in any kind of favoritism or order of importance, just in those that have been here. And you guys, well, I thought he said no.
No. Greg, would you like to be?
I would think there's probably somebody more experienced that might be more suitable but actually I was thinking of Mr. Boffa there, but
Well, I mean, Owen, you're going to be here 95% of the time, right?
I am. I
So-
think nearly perfect attendance.
So you really don't have anything to do.
Oh, you mean do I intend to not be here? No.
So,
It's already blocked off on my calendar forever. Google does that.
do you have any interest in it?
Someone nominate someone, please.
We do know that Mr. Freiberger cannot be both chair and vice chair at the same time. so.
We do know that.
Greg, you want to take it?
Do you want it?
No,
You don't want it?
no.
Okay, I'll take it.
Then I
Well,
nom-
then,
I'm
the
not-
nomination is for Mr. Linkwitz. Yes, from Mr. Baffa. So do we need a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Mr. Linkwitz is chairman, or vice chairman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The other two opportunities we have, one is to serve as the representative of the Planning Commission to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We had some discussion last night about the Board of Zoning Appeals, and we had two members appointed. So we would have, we have 6 BZA members appointed by the governing body, and then we have the 7th member is the Planning Commission's representative. And so Mr. Freiberger currently serves as the Commission's representative on the BZA. He is eligible for another term on the board, but anybody else who's interested in serving as the liaison or representative can do so. That board meets on the 3rd Thursday of each month at 4 o'clock. And so it is not unusual to have in the same week a Tuesday Planning Commission meeting and a Thursday Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, which is what we have this week, because you meet on the 3rd Tuesday and the BZA is on the 3rd Thursday. So Mr. Freiberger, I think, has had 2 terms at least serving as your representative on the BZA.
But he's still eligible to
He
continue.
is still eligible if he
Owen, would you
is
like
so
to do
I've
that?
inclined.
had, yeah, I came in filling someone else's term, and then I've had at least 2 terms after that. So I've been on it for some time. If someone else is interested in that, that's certainly okay with me. Otherwise, I can stay on it. I just do think it is vital that someone from this commission is there and actively participates, because the decisions that are made there are often made without a vast knowledge of the planning process or what the Planning Commission itself has done or what we have monitored in terms of policy overall, in terms of planning. So it's important.
I would suggest that we keep you on.
Okay.
I'll
Well-
second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Then I shall stay on the, as liaison to the zoning board, which I again am honored, and I will do that gladly. Which brings us to, what, Heritage Commission?
Yes, we also have a representative from the Planning Commission. Again, the Heritage Commission is a 7-member body, 6 appointed by the City Commission. The 7th member is the Planning Commission's representative on the Heritage Commission, and Mr. Baffa has served in that role the past year. He can continue to do so, but again, it's open to anyone with interest in serving on the Heritage Commission.
Are you wanting to stay in that role?
Unless somebody else wants it.
Is there someone else that's interested in that role? Again, it's very important, and I think it has more application in the near future than it's probably ever had, as we see Salina transform and downtown transform. So we need a voice there that has some basis and some knowledge. No one else? Can I have a motion for Mr. Baffa?
I move Chairman Baffa stay on the Heritage Commission.
It's been moved that Mr. Baffa stay on the commission and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, assuming there was no one opposed. Which should complete our election of officers.
That will conclude our slate of officers. I believe we have a youth member on the Board of Zoning Appeals who is Daniel Garcia. And then we do have a youth member on Heritage right now, don't we, John? Yeah, so we have youth members now on Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, and Heritage Commission. So,
Excellent. Excellent.
we do have one preliminary discussion item with you, and so we had the City Commission. They took 2 actions at their August 27th meeting. One, they concurred with your recommendation that what we refer to as digital billboards not be permitted within the city of Salina. And as part of that, they initiated a text amendment, which they referred to you for public hearing and recommendation. And then they also extended the moratorium to November 2nd, 2018. And the purpose of that time frame was to allow for your public hearing to occur and City Commission action to take place. They then, at a subsequent meeting, brought the matter back up for reconsideration. There was some additional discussion about whether the sign at Ohio and Midway for the Tony's Pizza Event Center, whether staff considered that to be a digital billboard, and we do not, and we explained why not. It is a large sign. It's out of scale and size-wise with some of our other digital signs, but it is an on-premise sign for the Tony's Pizza Event Center, and it does, if you drive by, it does sell some off-premise ads, some for sponsors of the TPEC, some not. So what that did was it threw us off a meeting as far as the scheduled public hearing, but one of the things that was discussed and brought up by some city commissioners had to do with electronic changeable copy signs in general, not necessarily digital billboards. And so what was, they were having trouble articulating what their text amendment would be, so they said staff could work with the Planning Commission to sharpen that up. But if you'll recall, when you were looking at the text amendments, we had one that we had drafted that applied to electronic changeable copy signs generally, and it prohibited electronic changeable copy signs in the C4 Central Business District but it allowed for them an exception for historical theaters if the signs were approved by the Heritage Commission. So what we would like to know today, and to try to get into the record, that as part of this text amendment where we're addressing digital billboards, if you would also like to, as part of that, consider the changes that would apply to electronic changeable copy signs generally as it relates to the central business district, and signs for historic theaters. We had kind of put that together, but when essentially the recommendation was to prohibit and not regulate digital billboards, that kind of got washed away with the regulations for digital billboards. So the question is whether, as part of this text amendment, you would like to have this part of it brought forward and considered again, and make a recommendation on that again as to electronic changeable copy signs generally, and to eliminate our references to time and temperature, which we would like to eliminate, address whether electronic changeable copy signs are allowed in the C4 district, and address whether you want to allow historic theaters in the downtown area to have the possibility of a changeable copy sign.
So it was removed in the process.
Yeah, so
We discussed it, but then it was
what we
removed.
did is we had you, you helped us develop a text amendment, which moved forward. That was put into ordinance form. The ordinance had three parts. It dealt with the time and temperature, the C4 electronic changeable copy. It dealt with regulations on digital billboards, and then it also clarified some things in the agricultural district. What the city commission did was basically they voted to deny the ordinance, and that was the cleanest way to do it. It just said, we're not going to approve this ordinance, and we'd like to go back and have a text amendment that explicitly prohibits those signs. So when they denied the ordinance, they also didn't include the part that dealt with time and temperature, C4 district, those. So we wanted to give ourselves an opportunity to bring those back before you and have you consider that separate and independent from the digital billboard question. But to do that, since the city commission's motion was just to address the digital billboard aspect, I was going to see if you wanted us to bring back the discussion and the opportunity to consider electronic changeable copy signs generally as it relates to eliminating the time and temperature language, addressing whether they are or not allowed in C4, and addressing the historic theaters question.
For those of you that may not have been here, we had this discussion, and we had vendors that actually spoke, and we asked them directly whether or not it was common. The response was no, it was not common to have C4 using those devices except on historic theater marquees. We, I thought, concurred with that, and I think that was the basic recommendation that we gave. Is there any reason that we would be changing that idea, or anyone here that has other thoughts regarding that, or that feels that in the central business district there should be more allowance for them? Anyone that disagrees that they shouldn't be on the theaters?
So historic theaters, would that include the art cinema?
Art Cinema is not a designated historic building. The Stiefel Theater is on the National Register of Historic Places, so right now it would be the only. The Masonic Center is a historic building, but it is not in the C4 Central Business District. And so this would refer to the property that's in the core district, which basically starts at Mulberry and extends up to Elm.
Does the art cinema have electronic changeable copy signage?
I don't believe so, but I was wondering maybe they would in the
Right.
future, and
I think that it would have to be, I mean, my understanding is that it'd be part of the historic element of the building, which that building is not, to my knowledge, in any way that kind of a building or of that period. And those that would be new, if there was to be a new theater built downtown, unless they're in a historic facade that was inclusive of that, they would not have that opportunity.
one of the exclusions, though, was for entertainment venues. Is that in another city? Maybe Hutch?
The only exception that we saw was for the designation of historic theaters. I mean, we can bring it back to you as an open-ended question. The main purpose of bringing it here was for you to authorize us to bring that forward, because the city commission only spoke to the digital billboards, and we didn't want to lose the work that had been done here, and we'd just like to bring it back to you for consideration.
And
But
if-
to do that, you would need to initiate that as part of the text amendment today.
So if everyone is in agreement that we should initiate the action that we had previously discussed, we would need to do so now in a motion.
And then if you
Let's
want
just
to
have a
broaden it
discussion.
beyond historic theaters, you certainly have the discretion to do that, but you can't do it unless you authorize us to bring it back to you for consideration at your October 16th meeting. So,
My intent of bringing that up is that they might want to do it in the future, and if they do want to, he could always ask for a variance. It doesn't have
or
to
they
be.
could ask to broaden the text. The reason we're bringing that particular thing up is that we've, as part of the various renovations going on in the downtown area and part of the Star Bonds project, some of that, the proceeds of that is going to go towards improvements to the Stiefel Theater, and one of the things they have on their list is signage that has changeable copy for upcoming events and things like that. And since they had informed us that that was something they were interested in and that the code currently doesn't allow for that, we thought this was an opportunity to bring it forward and get feedback from you. But in order for us to do that, we need your action to initiate a review of electronic changeable copy signs generally.
Does that need to be in form of a motion?
Yes, so we
Yes,
would like
please.
you to authorize staff to bring back for you the text amendment that we had previously discussed relating to electronic changeable copy signs generally. Not billboards, but just electronic changeable copy signs.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Ms. Eisenhower. All those in favor, vote aye, please. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
So for, as you want to mark your calendars, or as we look towards upcoming dates and items on September the 21st, or 27th, excuse me, Thursday the 27th, is it 5 o'clock or 5:30? From 5 o'clock till 7 at the American Red Cross offices on Broadway. There will be a open house and presentation from the consultants working on the Broadway corridor plan. And so they've taken their public feedback. They've looked at access, they've looked at streetscape, they've looked at uses and land uses along the corridor, and have come up with a plan for transforming that corridor and cost estimates and prices associated with that, but they have touched on all the things that they were asked to look at, the street dimensions and geometric, the potential for bike lanes or bike paths, sidewalks, streetscape enhancements, median enhancements and removals, and looking at land uses along the corridor. And so they'll present their recommendations at the American Red Cross on the 27th. And then on the 8th of September, we're going to call it a joint City Planning Commission, City Commission study session. It's going to be on, we're going to call it housing initiatives, but all planning commissioners are invited as if it's your study session as well, but it will be at a time that the City Commission usually conducts theirs. And we're going to be talking about accessory dwelling units. We're going to be talking about tiny homes. We're going to be talking about the Live Salina plan. We're going to be talking about the land bank that has been created. We're going to be talking about the CHODO, which is the Community Housing Development Organization that we do have in Salina, but hasn't been really very active and is looking for a project. And also the Salina Housing Authority has some plans for some housing activity in the community. So all those things will be touched on at the housing study session.
That is Monday, October 8th?
October 8th?
Monday, October 8th, but I'm going to put a caveat by that where we'll have to update that, because that's the date we were given, but it's also a date when the League of Municipalities is having their annual meeting, and we sometimes have city commissioners who go to the league meetings, which if there's not enough for a quorum on that date, then that study session could possibly be rescheduled. But right now it is preliminarily scheduled for Monday, October the 8th.
What time?
It would start at 2:30.
Well, those are all topics that we have a great deal of interest in.
Yes, and so what we've discussed is that we've had a lot more discussions with the Planning Commission on accessory dwelling units and tiny homes and things like that. The City Commission has had absolutely no discussion on it, and so it seemed like if we could have both audiences there at the same time, it would, to discuss that all together, it would be more effective. So that is subject to change depending on the commission's schedule. And then we will meet on the 2nd of October, and we're hopeful that on the 16th of October we will have our annual landscape awards on that date. And so that is, I think that's a pretty good indicator. We had one case withdrawn for the 2nd, but we will come back and talk about digital signs again as part of the October 16th meeting. And we have 2 items, rezoning cases for the 2nd. So I do think that there's going to be, October is National Planning Month, Community Planning Month, and I may be contacting Mr. Freiberger about reading a proclamation at the City Commission meeting declaring October to be Community Planning Month. So other than that, I think that's all the business that we have, but there's going to be a number of public meetings. There's going to be a number of discussions about corridors and housing and things like that that's going to occur. We did have a study session last night with the City Commission talking about Holmes Road and the challenges associated with how to finance that and the timing of improvements to Holmes Road. And I know a couple of you were in attendance, and there'll be some follow-up on that as well. So the case that you heard on Prospect and Magnolia Hills Estates number 2 plat will go to the City Commission on the 1st of October. So I think late September and into October, there will be a lot of opportunities for some dialogue on housing, because that's going to be a point of emphasis for the rest of the year.
Excellent. We've all done a lot of work on that, so we'll look forward to it.
That's all the items we have for you this evening.
If there's no other business and there's no members of the public that wish to address the commission, I would ask for a motion for adjournment.
So
I would only note that in the packets that you have, we have a planning commission roster back here, and if there's any information we have that's out of date or wrong, if you could bring that to Crystal's attention, we would appreciate it.
Perfect. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. Let's adjourn. If you have any corrections to Crystal's list, please let her know.
They put Mr. Scott Lang there.
He's not a mister?
I think
Well,
Greg's
none
got
of,
one.
none of the rest
Oh,
of
I
us
don't have
are.
a mister.
I think Greg's on, he's a mister also.
What do you mean?
Why am I not a mister?
I mean,